Today we're putting together this composter and we're going to let you know our thoughts on it. Stick with us. Welcome to the Handyverse, where we approach home ownership mindfully and turn to DIY as a first resort where our knowledge and skills allow, hopefully inspiring you to do the same. So today we're going to talk about composting, and I by no means am an expert in composting. In fact, this is only my second foray into composting. I wanted to get back into it because it's such a great resource for you gardening. There's nothing quite like it for the nutrients for your soil, and hopefully next year Jason will be building me a garden. One thing though that delayed me in starting composting again is I know that I wanted a turnstile composter such as this. I had one of the older style kind of just plastic container. You'd stick the shovel in the bottom and you'd have to sort of rotate it, and it just seemed like it never really broke down quick enough for me, and I mean I'd only get maybe one sort of output per season. So I read that this type of composter should produce a yield in about 2 to 8 weeks, and that sounded incredible to me, so we'll see. We normally try to do things ourselves, the DIY, and so that was where my head went first. But in sort of researching large enough drums to sort of create a composter, by the time we purchased a drum, it'd be below our budget, right out of the water. And this unit was available from Home Depot for a very reasonable cost. We'll put the link down below.
When we wake, hear the birds and see the sun. Side by side our fears are done. Oh, the good times just begun. We know what we have, let's hold on tight. Found what we're looking for in life. Call us crazy, but things are finally right. You and I, the future is bright. Oh, you and I, we got it. Oh,
so it doesn't say this in the manual, but you'll need 3/8 of an inch wrench. So it looks like the first step is to put the stand assembly together. It looks like this one is really angled and long. So that's a BB, so I'm going to put that aside, and that's a BB. We want the longer connection as opposed to the short one. What we do notice between CC and DD, this little connection part, if you look at the perpendicular arm here, the DD is much longer as opposed to CC. So I've line matched these two up. So this one here, the arm is much longer. So this is DD and this is CC. So we're just going to attach CC and DD, CC and DD, CC and DD twice for the bottom of the stand. Okay, so that's one. CC and DD. So this is a little confusing. They don't tell you which nut and bolt go where. But we only have 2 of the longer ones, but we have 6 of the shorter. So I think it's reasonable to assume that the longer ones you'll need through the 2 poles at the top here. So to connect CC and DD, we're going to use the shorter. So one thing we noticed is just that the manual shows you using a Phillips or a flathead screwdriver. But when we looked at the actual hardware, it makes more sense to actually use a Robertson so that it's not moving, like jiggling around when you're trying to tighten the hardware. And now we're just going to attach the top piece. So CC. And then this is the only other piece for this part. I'm going to pop it in. Now this is CC, but in the picture we have to flip this over because it attaches to DD and it makes sense.
if I will ever figure out where the road goes, even if I'm falling down, I will keep on searching for my highs.
So the two pieces left we have for this stand are this metal pole and this black hollow tube. So the long one is AA and this other is FF, which is all well and good. So here's where you may want to jump ahead because you might just save yourself a little time. This is misleading. In the nut and bolt package it shows you assembling the stand as a separate item without the composter on top, but then you're just going to have to take it apart, so don't do that. And in here as well it doesn't show the incorporation of FF, but if you skip ahead you'll see that you need FF to go on top of AA, which goes on top of your stand. So just don't attach that top piece just yet until you're ready to put the circular, whatever they're called, on the side. As you can see in this picture. So that's a little criticism of the instructions. It could be clearer. It's showing here like installing the panels around the composter, which initially I thought that was the next step, but in fact actually this is the next step. We want to install the skeleton, I guess the exterior part of the composter, like this picture here, and then install the panels. Otherwise I don't think you would be able to get this disc on in the middle. Unlike the metal pieces, they have marked the plastic molded pieces for us, which is nice.
Even if the sky is falling down, even if the sky is falling down, yeah. The sky is falling down.
Next step is we're going to install the panels. So we have 7B and 1C panel, and there's an important note here that you start installing the B here, go all the way around with the exception of the last one, the side closest to the air vent is going to be panel C. Now Jason made a point here. You'll notice that there's 56 nuts and bolts here. He suggested I use the drill. I suggest you do, but I'm going to do it by hand.
Because why?
Because I'm not good with the drill. So this is piece A that we're referring to. So this is the last panel that we'll install, which is panel C, and every other side is going to be B. So I'm going to start here. Okay, so here's panel B. I tried to put it on this way, it wouldn't go, so just flip it around until it kind of fits on the groove there. And then 56 screws later. This is probably self-explanatory, but this disc here is your separator for the two lots of compost. So there's a little notch here, so you want to make sure it sits in there as you go around, or because if not it'll be hard to put there once you have most of your panels in. Second piece. And as you go, of course, the panels are making it heavy, so if you let it go, it's going to go to the bottom, which is fine. But just remember, you want to keep this, that you don't want to attach where that vent is. Okay, 3 panels down, and that's taken a while. What we would recommend is buddy system. It's really hard to, it's a little tricky to thread these nuts onto the screws, but what's even harder is to hold the wrench inside as you're trying to tighten it. So Jason kind of just held the wrench from the inside and I tightened it from the outside, and that's a lot easier. So buddy system. The other thing we are criticism a bit is that the bolt is really short, so it makes it hard to thread the nut onto it. So they could have made those a little bit longer, especially where there's 56 of them. Oh my god, it's hard because it rolls. Maybe it would be easier to do it like this. There's there's something wrong with this piece. Wait a minute, it's not... There's a little notch there. Oh my god, that was poison. Okay, 3 more to go. Hopefully you're watching this video, you get a little bit of takeaway. If nothing else, know that you don't actually need to use the wrench for all 56 of those screws we realized on the last panel. Just by holding it, it seems to be tight enough. So that would have made install a lot easier. Okay, so moment of truth, last panel. The holes line up as it said it would. Nice. Okay. So we had one extra. Pretty convinced the factory mucked up, but just to be sure, we spun it around and we found the where it's supposed to go. So just double check if you have anything extra.
There are no spares. They should all be used.
Oh, this is gonna be hard to put in now. Holy smoke. Oh no. Can you put your hand in there? Here. So all in all, pretty easy to put together, a little time consuming, but yeah, let's put the door on and take it for a spin. It's like The Price is Right. So next we have to get it outside and fill her up. So I'm really looking for your guys' feedback in the comments below, because this is a whole new learning process. But a couple of things that I understand is that composting is not just as simple as throwing away any of your waste into the barrel. Composting is sort of a delicate balance between what's called greens and browns, and your greens are nitrogen rich and your browns are carbon rich. The manual that came with the composter said 2 to 1, but in a quick Google search it talked 2 to 1 in terms of your nitrogen, your greens to your browns is 2 to 1. A quick Google search showed that the browns to greens should be 30 to 1. So that's a huge discrepancy. So I'm not really sure which to go with. So I'm looking for some clarification from you guys. Right now I'm going to go with a 2 to 1 green to brown and see what happens. To clarify, greens are things such as your kitchen scraps or your vegetable ends like carrots, celery, broccoli, onion ends, all of those leftover bits. Or things like grass clippings. The browns are things such as sawdust, leaves, twigs that are more carbon rich. A couple of do's and don'ts for composting include not to put things in your composter such as meat, dairy, maybe cooked food, grease, bones, fat. This will attract animals and cause it to smell, and that's another clarification point, is that my understanding is that composting really shouldn't smell, and if you're having a problem with smell, there may be an issue in terms of the ratio of your greens and browns. You may have to make an adjustment. You do want to cut up things smaller so that they'll break down quicker. It's okay if you don't, it just means the process will take a little longer. You do want to make sure that your composter is moist, described as like a damp sponge. And there goes the cat. You do want to make sure compost has the right amount of moisture, not too wet, but you do need some moisture. If it's too dry, it's not going to help with the decomposition. The moisture content should be like a damp sponge, so depending where you're storing it, you may need to add a little bit of water to it and keep an eye on that process. You do want to store it in sunlight or in direct sunlight. That helps to heat it up and helps the process of breaking it down. And finally, you do want to make sure that you're turning your composter with this unit at least every couple of days, or perhaps when you throw in your scraps, turn it around several times. That helps with the process as well. If you have a more traditional unit, that might mean taking a shovel and flipping it and turning it manually as well. It's early days, but here are some of our thoughts on this composter. I do like the composter initially, and overall I like it. I think for the price it's a great composter. It's one thing I like about it, that it's really easy to turn, so we like that because again, turning is key. One thing to be aware of is that if it rains, water collects in these top depressions here, so if you're standing really close to the composter, you can get dirty composting juice on you, so stand back. That's important to know. On the bottom here you can see that some composting juice is dripping out of the unit, which is fine, but we were thinking initially we would keep it on the deck just because it would be really easy to make sure we put in our kitchen scraps right away and not accumulating a big mess in the kitchen. But this is not cool on the deck, so we're gonna move this down onto the yard. Another thing I like about the composter thus far is that it's quite a bit larger than I thought. Like initially, first impressions looking at it from the outside, it doesn't look very big, and it's not. Like, it doesn't take up a lot of space. But when you look inside, or at least I feel like when you look inside, it can hold quite a bit of scraps. And look, you can actually see steam coming off of that. Wow, it is heating up. Okay, so that brings me to the next point. It's only been like a week, and it actually seems like it's breaking down pretty good. So maybe I'll post a follow-up comment in a couple more weeks and let you know how it's working. So it seems to be doing what it's intended to do, is really speed up this composting process. So it's big, I like that. And this is really like the dual chamber part of it, because one part of composting I never quite understood is when you have a really large stagnant composting pile, how do you ever get to use what's ready and what's not? I mean, I suppose you can dig it from the bottom of the compost pile, but if you're always having to turn it, how do you really have like a fully broken down compost? So the idea of this is to eliminate that guessing game. There's two components, the dual chamber. So this here has a plus, so this is what we're continuing to add to. So when we feel like it's reasonably full, flip it upside down. I guess you just put it here. So now we're letting, this clock lets us know that this is the side that's curing, and then this is the side that we should continue to add new waste to. So I really like that. That's pretty neat. Simple but neat. I'm really impressed with the look of this compost already a weekend. You can see it somewhat resembles the look of dirt. And you know what? It really doesn't smell. It just kind of smells like I don't know, celery. It doesn't smell bad. So that's pretty neat actually. Okay, so that wraps up our thoughts on this composter, the dual chamber composter. Like I said, composting rookie, so please leave some comments below and let us know how we could do this better going forward. We're really not looking to get a lot of compost until next year, so we have lots of time to learn from you guys. If you like this video, hit subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching.